Jeff Bezos has dreamed of being a space entrepreneur since he was at least in high school. So why is he taking actions that are hurting the space program and his own company, Blue Origin? Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, Eric Berger, who does the best space reporting you'll find anywhere, writes for Ars Technica, put out a story late last week. He says, Blue Origin, that's Jeff Bezos' space company, filed suit in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims and received a protective order to seal the documents. That happened on Monday. The lawsuit follows a decision in late July by the USGAO that rejected a protest by Blue Origin over NASA's $2.9 billion award to SpaceX for its Starship program to develop the next generation lunar lander. So when we go back to the moon, it's going to be on a SpaceX lunar lander. Bezos didn't like that. Blue Origin's actions in court, again, this is Eric Berger, in addition to its ham-handed release of infographics that seek to denigrate SpaceX but have been widely mocked within the space community, are having a negative effect both on the company's relationships with the U.S. government and its own employees. Scott, this is the most damning part of this pretty lengthy report that Eric put together. A NASA source told Berger, and he's got sources all over NASA and SpaceX and Blue Origin and everywhere else, Blue Origin will never get a real government contract after this, they predicted. And the sentiment may be similar at the U.S. Space Force, which is frustrated by delays in the delivery of Blue Origin rocket engines for ULA's upcoming Vulcan rocket. Scott, I need to pick somebody's brain about this other than my own, because the only thing I can come up with, how is a guy this smart being so stupid when it comes to the fortunes of his own company?
Well, there's sort of an unwritten rule if you understand how to deal with the government, and that is never put government bureaucrats on the front page of the newspaper. These people do not want to draw attention to what they're doing behind the scenes at the GAO. And if you embarrass them publicly, which is what Bezos has basically done, or make a big issue of something they've done, then you're basically saying, I never want to have one of my contracts considered again. It doesn't make any sense to see what he's doing. Now, I'm sure in his little mind, he is thinking, well, I am doing what's good for my country, and that Elon Musk bid was a bad deal, and the U.S. government should definitely go with me. But to everybody else, it looks like he's asking for a second bite of the apple after the apple's already gone. It looks like just sore-loserism. And that never sells well with the American public. There is a sense that you get from watching these two men, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, that one of them has a dream and a vision and the intellect to put behind it and the ability to run an organization to implement it. And another guy is, he was peddling books and he thought, what am I going to do with all this extra money? Oh, how about if I launch a spacecraft? Now, maybe he's really been wanting to do this since he was in high school, but he just doesn't seem to be that engaged in it. He's just a businessman trying to sell something to the government, and it was overpriced. And frankly, under spec. And so the government goes with Bezos. And if he were smart, government goes with Musk. If Bezos were smart, he would just pull out and go, okay, what can we do here so that the next time a government contract comes up, it's us? And frankly, what can we do here that makes us less reliant on government contracts? What can we do to advance this thing that I say I'm passionate about? I mean, after all, he's an astronaut.
You know what? This is totally well, it's tangential, but I've got to say this anyway because it really pissed me off. Musk is always doing this really cool nerd stuff, and having been raised a Gen X nerd, I love it when a Gen X nerd becomes a billionaire and does really nerdy stuff. He puts his Tesla, aims it at Mars. He's got Bowie playing. He's got Don't Panic on the screen and all the rest. Bezos comes out of his spaceship, where he merely repeated what Alan Shepard had done in 1962, which is 60 years ago almost now, wearing a cowboy hat, and I realized, oh, man, he wants us to call him Maurice. He thinks he's the space cowboy. This guy.
I have to object. He doesn't want people to call him Maurice. He wants people to call him Maurice.
Because he's the pompatus of love?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. That explains the shape of his starship, or his spaceship, rather.
Oh, Lord.
All right. Bill, again, going back to Eric Berger's report. SpaceX's bid was substantially lower than the one submitted by Blue Origin. This is for the lunar module, about 50% less, because SpaceX had been developing its Starship on its own dime this whole time. So Bezos comes back and says, "You know what? I'll put up $2 billion of my own money to develop. Just give me another chance." And that's when they said no, and now he's got his lawsuit going. But the hubris involved here. One source told Eric Berger that for a long time lobbying in support of human return to the moon, this is Bezos doing this lobbying for all these years. Bezos believes that his advocacy for a lunar lander to the Trump administration 4 years ago eventually led NASA toward initiating the program. The source said Bezos feels like without Blue Origin, there would be no new lunar program, and that he should just get contracts based on the hoorah part, I suppose. Would it be nice if he built a damn ship that could reach orbit?
That'd be a start.
Yeah.
I think with the money he has, he might be able to afford some first class and relatively high frequency psychiatric care if he really believes that the reason we went back to the moon is because he was building a rocket that may be able to get into suborbital regions 4 years ago, and therefore America had its fire rekindled. Scott put his finger on it exactly right. He's got it exactly right. For Elon Musk, SpaceX is his business. For Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin is his hobby, and everything about the two programs indicates that. And to really appreciate the difference in this, you really have to go back to the start of both of these companies. They started more or less the same time, approximately. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, 10 years ago. At the time, Bezos was one of the richest men in the world, if not the richest. He was rapidly on his way. He had enormous resources. Musk was astonishingly poor as far as billionaires go. I mean, he didn't have a whole ton of money. He became the second richest man in the world, then the richest, then back second again to Bezos because of SpaceX, and because SpaceX allows him to do Starlink, and because SpaceX and Starlink engineering allows him to do Tesla, and on and on and on. He's the most valuable guy in the world. He actually does it, and Bezos doesn't. But to really get to the heart of this, Steve, you have to understand that I think Musk seems to be relatively immune to this. But you have to understand that when you get to this level of wealth, you are no longer a human being, and I'm not trying to dehumanize them rather than just to make it clear. Human concerns are not concerns that you have. And all we have to do is just look back a month or so ago. Something prompted Bezos to say, you know what, this thing's been sitting on the ground for 10 years now. Let's get this thing going. I'm going to go for a ride. And because Bezos, the billionaire, decided that he was going to take a ride, all of a sudden Branson, the billionaire, decides he's got to fly a week earlier, even though he didn't cross the Kármán line. And furthermore, even though that Virgin Galactic ship was nothing like space worthy. It was an enormous risk. Nobody knows exactly how much of a risk that was, except for the people who know what a risk that was. And the reason that he took that risk was because another billionaire was winning a pissing contest. And that's what it comes down to for these guys. So if you want an explanation for why Bezos is delaying the moon landing, he's delaying the moon landing because he can't stand the fact that Elon Musk continues to succeed where he continues to fail. And therefore, since Musk's successes are so rapid, we're going to see a launch of the Heavy with Starship on board this fall. Now, it may blow up on the Plaid, but something's going to happen. Somebody's going to push a button and a vehicle is going to attempt to fly. Since Bezos can't come close to this, his only hope of retaining his billionaire status among other billionaires is to slow Musk down enough, meaning slow the United States down enough and slow the human race down enough for him to have some reasonable chance to catch up. And these are not the actions of a person who has a dream of going to the moon. These are the actions of a guy of a dream who has a dream of Bezos base on the moon. That's the difference between these two guys. And it's just strange coincidence, but as I was coming to work today, I was listening to that Paul Simon song, These Days of Miracles and Wonders, and he has a line about this loose affiliation of millionaires and billionaires. And And it just gave me a strange thought, and that is that we should be proud of our millionaires, because frankly, if you've got a brain in America and you work hard, it's virtually impossible not to be a millionaire if you really have drive and original ideas. But once you get into the billions, especially the 10 billions of dollars, you are no longer pursuing, again, with the possible exception of Musk, you're now a different creature. You're a different creature, and you're like a check valve, like a one-way valve where money must continually come in much greater than it goes out. And now it's all about, look, once you have $100 million, you can't spend that money. Not really. I mean, really, you really can't. So it all becomes a question of who's got the most money, who's the richest guy in the world, what's the ranking on Fortune 500. They get together every year at this little retreat in Colorado, and I'm sure they make jokes about, 60 billion. Yeah, I remember when I had 60 billion, that kind of thing. It's his money. He's got the money. If he wants to be the first person to go to the moon, if he wants to establish Camp Bezos on the moon, he can very easily afford to do the entire thing by himself, write a check. He can go to Mars by himself. He can go to Mars 4 times, come back, and still have $20 billion. So I'm not too particularly sympathetic to this particular kind of whining from this particular kind of baby.
Indeed. This reminds me of the worst run major corporation in America that I can think of, because it's one that I follow, is Boeing. When they bought McDonnell Douglas all those years ago, I think it was during the 90s, during the big rift, during the big drawdown. McDonnell Douglas was kind of going down the tubes because their corporate culture was just toxic. But what ended up happening is it was the McDonnell Douglas guys who ended up taking over Boeing's operations. And as the McDonnell Douglas guys joked, we bought Boeing with their money. And this is why you have things like the 737 MAX issue, because the engineers aren't running the show anymore. They used to have engineers right there on the shop floor, watching things happen, making things happen, correcting errors on the fly. Now the bean counters are in charge, and the engineers are nowhere near the shop floors. They're in Chicago, not in the plant in Washington. It's a sad state. And nothing symbolizes this better, I think, than Boeing's Starliner spaceship, which was supposed to be delivering cargo to the International Space Station. I can't even remember how many years ago. Starliner finally had its first test flight in late 2019, so almost 2 years ago now. And it
ran into itself.
Failed. Yeah. Software issues, things misfiring. What was supposed to be an 8-day mission turned into 2 days, and the thing came down safely, and they've been rebuilding it all this time. They took it back out for another test launch just last week, and again, more problems. They couldn't solve it there atop the rocket that was supposed to take it to the space station. So instead, they haul it back off the platform, and I don't know what they're doing. They're rebuilding the thing again. Who knows when this thing is going to fly? That's Boeing. But the reason I bring up Boeing and all of these delays and all of these issues with Starliners is this. One failed test flight that was only in space for 25% as much time as it was supposed to be up there is still 2 days longer. 2 days longer than Blue Origin has been in space in its entire 20-year existence. And if that isn't the most damning thing anybody has said about Jeff Bezos and his little pet project, I don't know what it could be. That's your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.